for one, right, a part of me wants to like kill myself because I feel like nobody cares about me, right? But it's like, even if I do that, that's not gonna make people care. They might care for a little bit. They might be like, oh my God, oh no, what happened? Why you do that? And then a week later, I won't even be a thought in their fucking mind. So no. And then there's people out here.
You're angry more often than you used to be. Small things set you off. Traffic, work deadlines, your partner asking how you're feeling. You tell yourself it's stress, that you just need to push through, but deep down you know something isn't right. You're tired all the time but can't sleep well. You've pulled away from friends without really meaning to. When people ask if you're okay, you automatically say fine even when you're falling apart inside. This isn't just life being tough. What you're experiencing follows patterns that millions of men share but rarely talk about. Your depression doesn't look like the crying, sadness-filled version you see in movies. It looks like irritability, numbness, and the urge to escape through work, alcohol, or isolation. Your anxiety doesn't feel like panic attacks. It feels like constant restlessness, the need to control everything, and anger when things don't go according to plan. You've been taught that real men handle their problems alone, that seeking help is weakness, and that emotions are something to be managed, not expressed. These beliefs aren't serving your mental health, they're actively working against it. Understanding how your mind actually works as a man, and why traditional mental health approaches often miss the mark for you, is the first step toward feeling better. How society shapes your emotional landscape. From the moment you took your first breath, society began writing a script for how you should think, feel, and behave. Boys don't cry, they said. Man up, they urged. Be strong, they demanded. These messages, delivered through countless interactions with parents, teachers, peers, and media, have shaped not just how you express emotions, but how you experience them internally. You've likely internalized what psychologists call traditional masculine norms, a set of cultural expectations that include emotional stoicism, self-reliance, dominance, and the suppression of vulnerability. These norms create what researchers term masculine role stress, a psychological burden that occurs when you feel pressure to conform to restrictive gender roles that may conflict with your authentic emotional needs. Consider how this plays out in your daily life. When you feel sad, anxious, or overwhelmed, your first instinct might not be to reach out for support or even acknowledge these feelings to yourself. Instead, you might push through, distract yourself with work or activities, or convert these unacceptable emotions into anger, one of the few emotions society readily permits men to express. This emotional conversion doesn't eliminate your original feelings, it merely disguises them, often leading to increased psychological distress over time. The cultural blueprint you've inherited also emphasizes independence and self-sufficiency. While these traits can be strengths, they become problematic when they prevent you from seeking help during times of genuine need. You might view therapy or counseling as admitting defeat rather than as a tool for growth and healing. This perspective isn't your fault. It's the result of decades of social conditioning that has taught you to equate emotional expression with weakness. Understanding this cultural context is crucial because it helps you recognize that your struggles with mental health aren't personal failings, but rather natural responses to unrealistic societal expectations. You're not broken for feeling overwhelmed by the pressure to be perpetually strong. You're human for experiencing the full spectrum of emotions that come with navigating life's challenges. Your brain, hormones, and mental health Your mental health isn't shaped by culture alone. Biology plays a significant role in how you experience and process emotions. As a man, your brain structure and hormonal profile create unique patterns of psychological functioning that influence everything from stress response to emotional regulation. Testosterone, your primary sex hormone, affect mood, energy levels, and cognitive function in complex ways. While often associated with aggression and dominance, testosterone actually plays a nuanced role in your mental health. Low testosterone levels can contribute to depression, fatigue, and decreased motivation, while fluctuations in testosterone can affect mood stability. As you age, natural declines in testosterone may contribute to increased vulnerability to depression and anxiety. Yet these biological factors are often overlooked in discussions of men's mental health. Your brain's neural architecture also differs from women's in ways that impact emotional processing. The male brain typically has fewer connections between the left and right hemispheres, which can affect how you integrate emotional and logical information. This doesn't mean you're less emotional, rather you might process emotions differently, often requiring more time to identify and articulate feelings. Stress hormones like cortisol affect your brain differently as well. Chronic stress can lead to structural changes in areas of your brain responsible for memory, decision-making, and emotional regulation. The male stress response often involves a fight-or-flight activation that can be helpful in acute situations but problematic when sustained over time. You might find yourself constantly feeling on edge or ready for battle, even in situations that don't require such intense physiological arousal. Sleep patterns, which are crucial for mental health, also show gender differences. You may be more prone to sleep apnea and other sleep disorders that can significantly impact mood and cognitive function. Poor sleep doesn't just make you tired. It fundamentally alters your brain's ability to regulate emotions and cope with stress. Understanding these biological factors isn't about making excuses for mental health struggles, but rather about recognizing that your experiences are valid and rooted in real physiological processes. When you feel depressed, anxious, or emotionally overwhelmed, these aren't signs of weakness but rather indicators that your biological systems may need attention and support. Depression in disguise. Depression in men often looks different from the classic symptoms you might associate with the condition. While women with depression typically experience sadness, crying, and feelings of worthlessness, your depression might manifest as irritability, anger, aggression, or what psychologists call masked depression. You might not even recognize your symptoms as depression because they don't match the stereotypical presentation. Instead of feeling sad, you might feel constantly frustrated or angry. Small annoyances that you used to handle easily now seem overwhelming. You might find yourself snapping at loved ones, feeling road rage more frequently, or becoming irritated by situations that previously wouldn't have bothered you. This anger isn't character flaw, it's often depression wearing a mask that society finds more acceptable for men to display. You might also experience what researchers call male-type depression, characterized by symptoms like substance abuse, reckless behavior, increased work hours, or withdrawal from relationships. Rather than crying or expressing emotional pain directly, you might throw yourself into work obsessively, engage in risky behaviors, or turn to alcohol or drugs to numb psychological discomfort. Physical symptoms often accompany male depression, but are frequently overlooked. You might experience chronic fatigue, headaches, digestive issues, or unexplained aches and pains. These physical manifestations aren't all in your head. depression creates real physiological changes that can affect every system in your body. The challenge with masked depression is that it often goes unrecognized by both you and healthcare providers. You might visit doctors for physical symptoms without mentioning emotional distress, while medical professionals might miss the underlying psychological components of your complaints. This leads to underdiagnosis and inadequate treatment, perpetuating a cycle where your mental health continues to deteriorate. Sleep disturbances are another common feature of male depression that's often dismissed. You might have trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, or you might sleep excessively but never feel rested. Changes in appetite and weight are also common, though these might be attributed to stress or aging rather than recognized as symptoms of depression. Perhaps most concerning is the relationship between male depression and suicidal ideation. While women attempt suicide more frequently, men complete suicide at much higher rates. This difference is partly due to the methods chosen, but it also reflects the way male depression often goes unrecognized until it reaches crisis levels. Your depression might build silently, expressing itself through anger, withdrawal, and risky behaviors until it reaches a critical point where suicide seems like the only solution to overwhelming pain. When worry wears a different face. Anxiety in men often presents differently than in women, making it harder to recognize and address. While anxiety in women might manifest as worry, fearfulness, or panic attacks, your anxiety might show up as restlessness, aggression, or avoidance behaviors that seem unrelated to fear or worry. You might experience what psychologists call masculine anxiety, where traditional anxiety symptoms are filtered through masculine coping mechanisms. Instead of expressing fear directly, you might become controlling, attempting to manage your environment to reduce uncertainty. You might overwork, overexercise, or become obsessed with routines as ways of managing underlying anxiety without acknowledging the fear itself. Social anxiety in men often revolves around performance concerns, fear of not measuring up professionally, sexually, or socially. You might worry constantly about your job performance, financial security, or ability to provide for your family. These concerns aren't just practical worries. They're often rooted in deep-seated fears about your worth as a man if you fail to meet societal expectations. Physical symptoms of anxiety might be particularly prominent in your experience. You might notice heart palpitations, muscle tension, headaches, or gastrointestinal issues. These physical manifestations might be easier for you to acknowledge than emotional symptoms, leading you to seek medical attention for what you perceive as purely physical problems. Anxiety can also manifest as anger or irritability in men. When you feel anxious, your fight or flight response might default to fight, leading to aggressive responses to perceived threats. You might find yourself becoming argumentative, defensive, or hostile in situations that trigger anxiety, without recognizing that fear is the underlying emotion driving these behaviors. Avoidance is another common way anxiety expresses itself in men. You might avoid social situations, intimate conversations, or challenging work situations not out of laziness or lack of interest, but because these situations trigger anxiety that you'd rather not face. This avoidance can limit your personal and professional growth, creating a cycle where anxiety becomes more entrenched over time. Substance use often becomes a coping mechanism for male anxiety. You might use alcohol, drugs, or even excessive caffeine as ways to manage anxious feelings without addressing the root causes. While these substances might provide temporary relief, they often worsen anxiety over time and can lead to dependency issues that compound your original mental health concerns. isolation in a connected world. Despite living in an era of unprecedented connectivity, you might find yourself experiencing profound loneliness. Male loneliness has reached epidemic proportions, with studies showing that men have fewer close friendships than previous generations and struggle more with maintaining intimate emotional connections throughout their lives. This loneliness isn't just about being alone, it's about feeling disconnected from others on a meaningful level. You might have numerous acquaintances, work colleagues, or social media connections, yet still feel fundamentally isolated and misunderstood. This type of loneliness is particularly challenging because it can persist even when you're surrounded by people. The roots of male loneliness often trace back to childhood socialization. You are likely taught that emotional intimacy is primarily the domain of romantic relationships with women, while friendships with other men should remain superficial and activity-based. This leaves you with limited models for deep, emotionally supportive friendships that could provide crucial mental health benefits throughout your life. As you've gotten older, maintaining friendships has likely become more challenging. Career demands, family responsibilities, and geographic mobility can make it difficult to invest the time and energy required for meaningful relationships. Unlike women, who often maintain friendships through emotional sharing and regular communication, men's friendships frequently revolve around shared activities. When these activities become impractical due to life circumstances, the friendships often fade. The consequences of loneliness extend far beyond emotional discomfort. Chronic loneliness has been linked to increased risks of depression, anxiety, cardiovascular disease, and even premature death. Your immune system can be compromised by persistent loneliness, making you more susceptible to illness and slower to recover from health problems. Loneliness can also create a vicious cycle with other mental health issues. When you're depressed or anxious, you might withdraw from social connections, which increases loneliness and worsens your original symptoms. Breaking this cycle requires intentional effort to maintain and build relationships, even when your mental health makes social interaction feel difficult or unappealing. The digital age has created unique challenges for male connection. While technology offers opportunities to connect with others, it can also create a false sense of connection that doesn't provide the deep emotional support your mental health requires. You might have hundreds of social media friends, but still feel profoundly alone because these digital connections lack the intimacy and vulnerability necessary for genuine human bonding. When your job becomes your worth. For many men, professional identity becomes so intertwined with personal worth that job-related stress can trigger serious mental health crises. You've likely been conditioned to view your career success as a primary measure of your value as a person, making work-related challenges particularly threatening to your psychological well-being. This relationship between work and identity creates unique vulnerabilities. When you experience job loss, career setbacks, or professional failures, these events can feel like existential threats rather than temporary challenges. Your entire sense of self might feel under attack, leading to depression, anxiety, and identity confusion that extends far beyond professional concerns. The modern workplace presents numerous psychological challenges that can impact your mental health. You might face constant pressure to perform, compete with colleagues, and adapt to rapidly changing technological and economic demands. The traditional career path that previous generations relied upon, stable employment with a single company leading to secure retirement, no longer exists for most men, creating ongoing uncertainty about your professional future. Work-life balance has become increasingly difficult to maintain, with technology making you constantly accessible to work demands. You might find yourself checking emails at all hours, taking work calls during family time, or feeling guilty when you're not being productive. This constant connection to work stress can prevent your nervous system from relaxing and recovering, leading to chronic stress and burnout. Workplace culture often reinforces problematic masculine norms that can worsen mental health struggles. You might feel pressure to work longer hours than necessary, avoid taking sick days even when unwell, or suppress emotions that might be perceived as weakness by colleagues or supervisors. These behaviors can exacerbate existing mental health issues while preventing you from taking necessary steps to care for your psychological well-being. Financial stress related to work performance can create additional mental health burdens. You might feel intense pressure to provide for your family, maintain a certain lifestyle, or achieve financial milestones that seem increasingly unattainable. This financial anxiety can consume your thoughts, affect your sleep, and create tension in your relationships. Career transitions, whether voluntary or involuntary, can be particularly challenging for your mental health. Retirement, job changes, or industry shifts can trigger identity crises as you struggle to redefine yourself outside of familiar professional roles. These transitions require significant psychological adjustment that's often underestimated and undersupported. The vulnerability challenge. Intimate relationships present unique challenges for men's mental health, particularly around emotional expression and vulnerability. You've likely been conditioned to believe that emotional openness is feminine, and that maintaining strength means keeping your feelings private, even from those closest to you. This conditioning creates significant obstacles to developing the kind of intimate relationships that support good mental health. Your romantic partner might crave emotional connection and vulnerability from you, while you might feel uncomfortable or even threatened by requests to share your feelings. This dynamic can create relationship tension that further stresses your mental health. The pressure to be the strong one in relationships can be psychologically exhausting. You might feel responsible for solving everyone's problems, providing emotional stability for your family, and maintaining optimism even when you're struggling internally. This emotional labor often goes unrecognized and unappreciated, yet it can be deeply draining and contribute to burnout and resentment. Communication patterns in your relationships might reflect broader masculine socialization patterns. You might be more comfortable discussing practical matters, problem solving, or sharing opinions than expressing emotions or discussing relationship dynamics. This can leave your partner feeling emotionally disconnected while you feel criticized or inadequate for not meeting emotional needs you don't fully understand. Conflict resolution in relationships can be particularly challenging when you've been taught that backing down or compromising represents weakness. You might find yourself escalating arguments, withdrawing from conflict entirely, or feeling frustrated when emotional discussions don't follow logical patterns you can easily understand. Sexual intimacy can also be affected by mental health struggles, creating additional relationship stress. Depression, anxiety, and stress can significantly impact libido and sexual performance. Yet these issues are often difficult to discuss openly with partners. The shame and embarrassment around sexual difficulties can create further isolation and worsen existing mental health problems. Fatherhood presents additional psychological challenges that can impact your mental health. You might struggle with balancing work and family responsibilities, feeling inadequate as a parent, or managing the anxiety that comes with wanting to protect and provide for your children. Postpartum depression in fathers is increasingly recognized but still rarely discussed or treated. When past experiences shape present struggles, men experience trauma at high rates, yet trauma-related mental health issues often go unrecognized or untreated. You might have experienced childhood abuse, military combat, accidents, violence, or other traumatic events that continue to affect your mental health years or decades later. Trauma in men often manifests differently than in women, making it harder to recognize and address. Instead of classic PTSD symptoms like flashbacks or nightmares, you might experience what psychologists call complex trauma responses. These might include emotional numbing, hypervigilance, anger outbursts, or risky behaviors that seem unrelated to past traumatic experiences. Childhood trauma has particularly lasting effects on men's mental health. If you experienced abuse, neglect, or witnessed domestic violence as a child, these experiences shape your brain development and coping mechanisms in ways that continue to affect you as an adult. You might struggle with trust, emotional regulation, or maintaining healthy relationships without understanding that these difficulties stem from early traumatic experiences. Military trauma affects a significant number of men, with combat veterans experiencing PTSD, depression, and substance abuse at alarming rates. If you've served in the military, you might find it difficult to readjust to civilian life, maintain intimate relationships, or manage the psychological aftermath of combat experiences. The military culture of stoicism and toughness can make it particularly difficult to seek help for trauma-related mental health issues. Workplace trauma is another often overlooked source of psychological injury. You might have experienced workplace accidents, witnessed traumatic events, or endured prolonged workplace harassment or bullying. These experiences can create lasting mental health effects that interfere with your ability to work and maintain relationships. Sexual trauma in men is severely underreported and undertreated. If you've experienced sexual assault or abuse, you might struggle with shame, confusion about your masculinity, or difficulty maintaining intimate relationships. Societal myths about male sexuality and strength can make it particularly difficult to acknowledge and process sexual trauma. The effects of trauma often compound over time if left untreated. You might develop coping mechanisms like substance abuse, workaholism, or emotional withdrawal that provide temporary relief but create additional problems. Untreated trauma can also increase your risk for other mental health conditions like depression, anxiety, and personality disorders. Substance use, self-medication, and escape. Substance use among men often represents an attempt to self-medicate underlying mental health issues rather than recreational activity. You might use alcohol, drugs, or other substances as ways to manage depression, anxiety, trauma, or stress without recognizing that these behaviors are actually symptoms of deeper psychological struggles. Alcohol use is particularly common among men as a coping mechanism for mental health issues. You might drink to relax after stressful days, socialize with friends, or numb emotional pain. While moderate alcohol consumption might seem harmless, using alcohol as your primary stress management tool can quickly develop into dependency and worsen underlying mental health problems. The relationship between substance use and masculinity creates additional complications. Drinking alcohol might be viewed as masculine behavior, while seeking therapy or taking medication for mental health might be seen as weak. This cultural dynamic can make substance abuse seem like a more acceptable way to cope with psychological distress. Work-related substance use is common among men in high-stress professions. You might use stimulants to enhance performance, alcohol to unwind after difficult days, or other substances to manage the psychological demands of your career. This pattern can quickly escalate from occasional use to dependency, creating additional stressors that worsen your original mental health concerns. Prescription drug misuse has become increasingly common among men, particularly with painkillers and anxiety medications. You might start using these substances for legitimate medical reasons, but continue using them to manage emotional pain or stress. The transition from medical use to dependency can be subtle and difficult to recognize. The consequences of substance use extend beyond immediate health effects to impact every area of your life. Substance abuse can worsen depression and anxiety, damage relationships, impair job performance, and create legal and financial problems that compound your original stresses. Breaking free from substance dependence often requires addressing both the addiction and the underlying mental health issues that contributed to its development. Redefining strength and seeking support. Understanding the psychology of men's mental health is only the first step toward healing and growth. Real change requires challenging the cultural narratives that have shaped your understanding of masculinity and emotional expression, while developing new ways of thinking about strength, vulnerability, and self-care. True strength isn't about suppressing emotions or handling everything alone. It's about having the courage to face your struggles honestly and seek the support you need to overcome them. Recognizing when you need help and taking action to get it requires more bravery than suffering in silence. Your mental health matters, and taking care of it isn't weakness. It's essential self-maintenance. Professional mental health support can be transformative when you find providers who understand the unique challenges men face. Therapists who specialize in men's mental health can help you navigate the cultural pressures you face while developing healthier coping strategies. Different therapeutic approaches work better for different people, so don't be discouraged if the first therapist or treatment approach doesn't feel right. Building meaningful relationships with other men can provide crucial support for your mental health. These friendships don't have to involve deep emotional sharing to be beneficial. They just need to involve genuine connection and mutual support. Whether through sports, hobbies, work relationships, or support groups, having other men in your life who understand your experiences can significantly improve your psychological well-being. Developing emotional literacy, the ability to identify, understand, and express your emotions, is a crucial skill for mental health. This doesn't mean becoming overly emotional or losing your composure. It means becoming more aware of your internal experience and developing healthy ways to process and communicate your feelings. Physical self-care plays an important role in men's mental health. Regular exercise, adequate sleep, proper nutrition, and medical care all contribute to psychological well-being. Taking care of your body isn't vanity, it's an essential component of mental health maintenance. Creating work-life balance requires setting boundaries and prioritizing your overall well-being over constant productivity. This might mean learning to say no to excessive work demands, taking vacation time, or finding ways to disconnect from work stress during personal time. Your mental health journey matters. Your mental health journey is unique, valid, and important. The struggles you face as a man in contemporary society are real and deserve attention, understanding, and care. You don't have to navigate these challenges alone, and seeking support isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of wisdom and self-respect. The psychology of men's mental health is complex, influenced by biology, culture, personal history, and individual circumstances. Understanding these factors can help you make sense of your experiences and develop more effective strategies for managing your mental health. Remember that mental health isn't a destination you reach, but an ongoing aspect of your life that requires attention and care. Change is possible, regardless of how long you've been struggling or how entrenched your patterns might seem. Every step you take toward better mental health, whether it's reading articles like this, talking to a friend, seeking professional help, or simply acknowledging your struggles, matters and contributes to your overall well-being. Your story doesn't end with your current struggles. You have the capacity for growth, healing, and positive change. The courage to face your mental health challenges head-on, and the wisdom to seek support when needed are already signs of the strength and resilience that will carry you forward. Your mental health matters, your experiences are valid, and your future can be brighter than your present circumstances might suggest. Take the next step, whatever that looks like for you. Your mental health and your life are worth the investment.